All right, we are going to continue our work on linear inequalities, but what we're going to do is we're getting into something a little bit harder this time. Is we're going to have all these inequalities are going to be in standard form, and we got to convert them first to y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, and then we can graph it just like we did yesterday. Okay, so the first four problems over here on the left, I just want us to practice real quick how to move basically y by itself or get this into y equals mx plus b. Okay, so if you look at number one here, what that's going to look like is we got to get the x to the other side first. So if you subtract 4x on both sides and just treat that inequality sign just like it's an equal sign, and I'll remind you of that special rule when we get to it, okay? So that's going to leave you with a, and you can put a 1 in front of that y if you want because there's no number. Bring that inequality sign down is greater than, and then remember these, the -7 and the -4x, those cannot combine, so we got to write those separately. -4x, and then that's a -7. And then just so we follow the same steps, what I'm going to do is I am going to divide by this +1, but remember this step is not necessary, just because if you divide anything by 1, it is itself. Okay, so now that y is by itself is greater than, -4 divided by 1 is going to continue to be -4x, and then that's still -7, okay? So that's how you get it into y equals mx plus b, okay? So we're not going to graph this yet. We're going to wait to practice first to get into y equals mx plus b. All right, so let me do one more with you, and then you can practice on your own. I just want to get into that special rule when you have to divide by a negative. All right, so this next example here, same thing. First step is to get rid of the x term, so subtract 6x on both sides. Okay, so remember this minus sign has to come down with it, okay? So we're going to bring that negative, and I'm going to put -1y is greater than, remember I can't combine these, so that's -6x and then a -2, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide by this -1, okay, on everything. Divide by -1, okay? All right, so now we're going to get y by itself, but because we divided by this negative, and it's very important, I want you to circle this negative sign that we're dividing by, and then also circle the sign. Okay, that sign is going to flip over, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle that also, okay? So you see how these signs flipped over there, okay, because we divided by the negative. All right, so -6x divided by -1 gives you +6x, and then -2 divided by -1 gives you a +2. Good, and now we are ready to graph that into y equals mx plus b. All right, in case I went too fast, let's go back up and you guys can see number 1 and 2. All right, now what I want you to do is try number 3 and 4 on your own. All right, just for time purposes, let's go ahead and I'm just going to give you the answer here. This one should have been y. The sign should have been flipped. It's equal to a +1/2 x and is equal to a +10. That's the answer you should have gotten. And if you didn't, don't worry, I'll help you when I get back, okay? And then number 4, just for time purposes, you should have gotten a y by itself. The sign should have flipped because of the negative, and that should be a +1x or just +x, and then +0 is just nothing, so I don't need to put the +0, so that should have been your answer there. All right? Okay, cool. So now on the rest of the problems on this side, what we're going to do is we're going to first get into y equals mx plus b, and then we are going to graph it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just so I have some room to write, is I'm going to write this. I'm going to write this inequality down here on the side here. So 7x plus y is less than 6. Okay. All right, cool. So now first thing we're going to do is get this into y equals mx plus b. So first we're going to subtract the 7x on both sides. All right, that gives you 1y by itself. Because this is positive, I don't need to put a negative or a plus sign. I can just leave it like that. Is less than -7x. Oops, sorry, should have put a negative there. -7x and then a +6. Okay. So because I have a +1y by itself, I don't need to do anything there. I can just leave that by itself, okay? All right, so now I'm ready to graph. All right, so if I go back up to the top, I can label my m. My new m is going to be that number that's connected to your x, so that's the -7, okay? And then the b is going to be that number that's on the end. In this case, it's a 6, okay? So that's a +6. All right, and then the line and the shade, we want to just go ahead and label these so that way it's easier when we go to our graphing, okay? The line, what type of line are we going to have? Remember, that comes from the inequality sign. That is going to be a dashed line, okay, because there is no solid line underneath. Okay, so that's a dashed line. And the shade, now the shade is going to want to always come from your new equation, which is that one on the bottom. In this case, the sign did not flip, but you always look at your y equals mx plus b equation, or inequality, so that way you can see if the sign flipped or not. In this case, it didn't, but sometimes it will, okay? All right, so now let's graph it. So the shade, I'm sorry, let's talk about the shade. So the shade is a less than, so this is gonna end up being below, okay? Because remember, less numbers are below and not above, right? Above would be greater, okay? All right, so now let's graph it. So we start at our y-intercept, which is positive 6, okay? So that's positive 6 right up here. And then our slope is negative 7, okay? So let's make that a fraction. So that negative 7 we can turn into negative 7 over 1. All right, so we're going to go down 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then over 1. All right, so because I went to the negative direction first, I need to go positive 1, okay? You can't go both negative. You got to go 1 negative, 1 positive. Let's go and get one more point. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then to the right 1. All right, go ahead and put a dot there. And now we're ready to draw our dashed line. Remember, it's a dashed line because we do not have that solid line underneath the inequality. All right, and we said shading is below the line. And remember what I told you is go ahead and put your pin. You can see my red dot. Go ahead and put the pin right on the y-intercept. All right, now is y less than or is y greater than? Is y smaller or is y bigger? Okay, so you can see from our inequality sign here, y is smaller. So we want to go to the smaller numbers, which is below. Okay, so we are going to shade, these numbers down here, which happens to be on this side of the line. Okay, so if it still doesn't make sense to you, think about being smaller or bigger than the y-intercept. All right. Okay, let's do one more together, and then I'm going to turn you loose on number 7. Okay, so let's go back up to the top here. And do number 6. So I do have a little bit more room to work over here, so I can just write this inequality up top. So that's 10x plus 5y is greater than negative 20. All right, and I want to get this into y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 10x on both sides. That's always the first step. All right, and now I'm going to have a positive 5y is greater than, this turns into a negative 10x minus 20. All right, perfect. And then the last step is to divide by 5 on both sides. So your new inequality should be y is greater than negative 2x minus 4. Okay. All right, perfect. Now it's easy to label our m and our b, and then also our shading and our line, okay? So we're going to label our m as that negative 2, so that is the number that's with the x, so that's negative 2 over 1. And then our b is that number on the end, which is in this case minus 4 or negative 4. Now, what kind of line is this? You want to look at your inequality sign. Okay, so everyone, you can circle your inequality sign. That does not have a line, so this one also is a dashed line, not a solid. And then the shade, y is bigger, or y is greater than, the greater than numbers are above, okay, above that y-intercept. All right, so if you always follow these same steps, it's going to be a little bit easier to graph because you already have all of your information labeled. Now you just have to put it on the graph. You don't have to think about it once you graph. All right, so starting point is the y-intercept, so that's at negative 4. And the slope here is negative 2 over 1, so I'm going to go down 2 over 1. I'm going to go down 2 over 1. We can also go the opposite way. We can go up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. And that should be enough dots there. You don't have to draw a bunch of dots, just enough to connect a line. All right, so I'm going to draw a line straight through these dots. Oops, I'm sorry, look at me. Okay, so we have to draw a dashed line, remember, okay? Dashed line, that's why we label it. All right, dashed line, we do not want a solid line here. Okay, dashed line, and we already labeled above, so we know it's going to be above this line, but once again, if you are confused, just put your pencil right on that y-intercept. You can see my red dot here. All right, and then think about y. Okay, look at the inequality. Y is bigger than all of that other stuff, so bigger numbers are above. They're up here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be shading this stuff up here, which includes everything above the line. Okay, so everything, and that's just enough shading is what you need. You don't need to color that in really darkly. All right. Now, if this is still confusing you, try to keep playing around with that calculator. I'm going to teach you next week how to use the calculator if you don't know how to do so already. All right, so now try number 7 on your own. Ready, go. All right, what you should have gotten when you got y by itself, it should have been y is, the sign would have flipped because we're going to divide by that negative here. Okay, so that's y is less than or equal to. And then you should have gotten a positive 1/2 x and then a minus 2. All right, that's what you should have gotten for your inequality, okay? So a lot of you might have gotten the 1/2 x minus 2 right, but you forgot to flip the sign. So make sure you remember you got to flip that sign when you divide by the negative 2. So that gives you a slope of 1/2 and a b of negative 2. The shading should be a solid line, and the shade should be below because y is less than, okay? So if we graph this really quickly, we got a y-intercept at negative 2, and we are going to go up 1 over 2. Okay, so we're going to go up 1 over 1, 2. Up 1 over 1, 2. And we can go also the other way, down 1 to the left 2. Down 1 to the left 2. Okay, and we are going to draw a solid line this time, so you can connect those dots with a solid line. Good. And the shading is below. When the flatter the line gets, it's a little bit easier to see below or above. But just in case, we got our y-intercept here. All the numbers that are smaller or less than y are down here, okay, where my red dot is down there. So we want to shade that section. All right, so just give it a little crosshairs. All right. If you're still struggling with this, have no fear, okay? Keep working with the calculator, see if that makes sense to you, if you can still graph it. And then I definitely will help you when I get back, okay? All right, let's go to the back side on right equations. So we're going to skip number 8 because number 8 is more practice for you to do. But what I want to do is I want to go down to number 9. All right, number 9 is we have a graph, and we need to write an equation or an inequality from it, okay? So if you remember just writing equations, the 2 important points, or it's important to find 2 points, but the most important one is that y-intercept, okay? So everyone put a dot where the graph crosses the y-axis. It happens to be at the origin, okay? So our b, let's go and label our b. Our b is going to be 0, all right? Our b is 0. And now the m, we find our m by finding another good point, okay? So another good point, it looks like it goes through about right here. Okay, I just went down. You can go up if you want. You can choose this point if you want. It does not matter. And remember, you're drawing your triangle. Okay, so we want to draw a triangle connecting those 2 dots. Okay, and our slope, or our m, remember, it's going to be rise over run. Okay, rise over run. So we are going to go down. I believe that is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to run 1, okay? So our slope here is 4 over 1 or just 4, okay? Because 4 over 1, I can actually put that 4 over 1 is equal to 4, okay? And now the line here, the type of line, it is a dashed line. So let's go ahead and write dashed in there, okay? And the shading, I know it's kind of hard to see because the line is close to vertical, but the shading is below. And remember, below means less than, okay? So it should be really easy to write our y and our x terms. So y, go ahead and leave a space there, and we're going to put a 4x, and then if it's a plus 0, you can put plus 0 if you want, but really that's not necessary. I'm going to go ahead and erase that because it really doesn't, you don't need to put the plus 0, you can just have a 4x. Okay, and now the time is to put our inequality sign, okay? We have a dashed line, so that means there is no solid line underneath it, and the shading is below, so that means y is less than. Okay, y is less than 4x. All right, so you're still going to write an equation the same way as you used to write, or an inequality, the same way you used to write an equation. You got to label your y-intercept and find another point to find your slope, and then just y equals mx plus b, or in this case, y is less than mx plus b. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go to the next one, and then I'm going to have you try 11 on your own. All right, so number 10, once again, label your y-intercept, okay, so that's going to be right on, it looks like 4, okay, so before you do anything else, go ahead and label your b as 4, and then find another good point. To me, it looks like there's a point right there, all right, right at, I believe that is 3, 6, okay, and then now draw your triangle to find your rise over run. It looks like we're rising 1, 2, and then running 1, 2, 3. All right, so remember it's rise over run. So we're going to go a 2 is the rise, the run is 3. And I cannot reduce that, so you're going to leave that fraction the way it is. All right, now we have a solid line. Okay, solid line, and the shading is above. Okay, so the y equals mx plus b should be the easiest part. So just leave a space in between the y and the x term. So y, leave a space, and then you got your 2 over 3 is your m, x, and then your b is a positive 4, so that's a plus 4. All right, now we do have a solid line, so that means there's going to be an or equal to or a solid line underneath our inequality sign. And the shading is above, so that means y is bigger than or greater than. And we have to have that or equal to. Okay? All right, so that's how you write an inequality from a graph. I hope that helps. And once again, if you're struggling with this now, don't worry about it. I will help you for sure when I get back. All right, so try number 11 on your own. Ready, go. All right, hope you had enough time to write one on your own. If you do not have, if you still are looking for some time, then please, by all means, pause the video, and that way you can try to find your answer before I display the right one, okay? All right, so the first thing you always want to do is label your y-intercept. So that looks like it's at -10. So go ahead and label your b as -10. And then your other point, it looks like at +2, -7, right there in blue. And that's all you need. And then draw a triangle there. All right, so this rise over run looks like it's up 1, 2, 3, and then a run of 1, 2. All right, so this one is a reciprocal slope of the last problem. All right, so that's 3 over 2. Once you put 3 and 2, there we go. Okay. All right, now the line is another solid line. Okay, and the shade is also above. Okay. All right, so y, leave a space. Oops, just going off the last problem. There we go. The slope is 3 over 2x, and then the -10. And then now the sign is going to have a line under it, so you put a line under it. And then the inequality is above, so that means y is bigger than. Okay, greater than or equal to 3 over 2x minus 10. All right, now you are equipped to do your assignments. Ready, set, go.